Hello, my name's Dwight Sora, and I play General Christopher Rykhoff in AGIAN. General Rykhoff is the supervising officer at a Guantanamo-type military facility that is housing prisoners who are being interrogated, ostensibly in order to prevent terrorist attacks on the United States, its government, and its people. And basically, I'm the chief interrogator also, and it's guiding, I guess, the soldiers underneath me in whatever it is they have to do, which includes questioning the prisoners and engaging in what would be considered torture, specifically using techniques similar to waterboarding, which of course has been in the press a lot lately. What attracted to me to the play initially, from the very first time I saw the notice for the auditions for it, was that it mentioned that basically this was a play dealing with the whole subject of the war on terror, and which is something I have followed closely since September 11, 2001. The reason when going back in time a little bit, when that whole series of events happened, what immediately caught my attention when it became very obvious that this was the work of Arab terrorists, and of course there was very much of a sense in the country that this was something akin to what had happened when, with the Japanese sneak attack in 1941 at Pearl Harbor. My sentiments immediately went to the fact that I'm of Japanese descent, and of course, as people know, 125,000 Japanese Americans, their families, everyone were interned by the US government during that period, supposedly for security reasons, and as it turned out, it was really had nothing to do with security at all. It was all about the hysteria of the time and the government attempting to looking like that they were doing something to maintain control, and simple factors like racism that was prevalent in the society at the time. And so I very much felt back during September 11th that I was very concerned that there would be similar actions taken against Arab Americans or anyone who was sort of associated with Arab or Muslim Americans. And it seems like, though it's not being covered a lot by our mainstream press, that has happened. Not to the same extent, perhaps because the government has learned that you simply can't round people up and stick them in big open camps anymore, because that would be too obvious. And so of course now we have, of course, sort of, I guess, extraterritorial incarcerations taking place in places like Guantanamo Bay, which is outside of US territory, of course. And we've also heard about people undergoing extraordinary rendition, where they're sent off to some country friendly to the United States and apparently very friendly toward the idea of torture. And if it isn't obvious already, I'm not very happy with these sort of ideas and these sort of actions being taken by our government. So as soon as I saw the audition notice that mentioned that this was a play that was going to be dealing with this, what's been going on in the country lately, that immediately fired up my attention. When I auditioned, I wasn't aware of what roles I was auditioning for, so I was quite surprised that I was offered the chance to play General Rykhoff, since he is sort of, for lack of a better word, the chief baddie. General Rykhoff, in my opinion, is driven by a very strong sense of duty, for very positive quality. He's truly a patriot. He believes that the United States is a very important and wonderful country, and that its laws, its way of life are something to be cherished, and that it is up to people like himself to protect it and to use whatever means are necessary. And that's not something I believe personally, but I understand there's many other people out there who do think it is necessary. It is necessary to torture. It is necessary to kill, to protect. That whole thing. You need to wage war in order to ensure peace. I also believe that in developing Rykhoff's character is the idea that he's not evil. Also, though, you have to bring in the idea that there is something slightly, the way I said it to Steve, is there's something slightly off about people like Rykhoff. And again, that's not that they're evil. It's just that there are some people for whom, well, the best way to put it is by a story is when I was thinking of the character of Rykhoff when I was first reading the script. I thought of a conversation I had with a friend of mine who was a former Army Ranger, interestingly enough, and we were having a conversation just after the whole Abu Ghraib prison scandal broke out in the news. And basically what this friend of mine told me was that when President Bush got up in front of all the press and said, we do not torture, the United States does not torture, he said, well, that's ridiculous, because he said, well, one, we do. not that they were bad, not that we're evil, but because that is part of the nature of war. Part of what happens during wartime, or anything involving our military, is people do bad things. What I would hope people would feel after watching again is that they would really sit there and think carefully about exactly what does it mean when someone is being physically tortured? Like what is that doing to? What does that mean for us as a country? If you've lived the country as a soul, and is that taking something away to engage in that? And then also just to keep in mind, like, these people who are being interrogated, taken away from their families, and in some cases, being incarcerated for long periods of time, and for all we know, being executed in situations where the outcome of their lives will never be known to their families. Trying to have some empathy for people like that, trying to understand, like, maybe even if the worst criminals, is that really right? And of course, there's the other cases. Well, what if we're wrong? Because there is always the possibility that you have arrested the wrong guy, and if you do all these horrible things to the wrong person, can you live with the idea that, like, well, if as long as we're keeping the terrorists away, 1 out of every 4 guys, if they're a false positive, we can accept that. Can you accept that? I think I would like people to question that, and that would be the ideal situation. I don't think you could change the whole world with one piece, but if people start to think anything we can do to add to the conversation debate, I think is good.